So it's no shock to anybody that we live in a digital age, that it is here in full force, and most of us consume most of our media digitally. That it's rare that some of us actually have physical media like CDs to listen to our music, or like going to a Blockbuster to watch a movie, or like going to the video game store to buy a physical game. That most people now do all these things digitally. And initially there was a lot of fear around this, that it seemed really cool and that people were kind of pumped. I especially remember when Netflix was starting out, that it seemed like, wow, this is really incredible. But the fear started to loom around us of like, what happens if the places that these things exist just start shutting down? And we've seen that happen a few times, whether it was the Wii U store or whether it was some kind of a movie service. That we've seen it, but it hasn't really felt like it's really come upon us yet. And recently, PlayStation had this kind of scandal where a bunch of movies and TV shows that people owned are now just gone. I think it was anything that was made by Paramount, because they now have a streaming service and want people to go there, are just gone. That if you purchase something on the PlayStation Store from them, it's now disappeared. And this brings up that fear again. And to be honest, I used to think that this fear was silly. That I really thought that, like, come on guys, if we buy something, of course these companies are going to do their best to give us that product and to make it available, blah, 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 blah. But I think, to be honest, my initial impression and naivety was wrong. Essentially, it costs money for them to even keep these things accessible for us, and to think that after they've already made their money, that they'll do that forever, and even that these companies will last forever to be able to provide that, is kind of silly. A case in point for me is the old Spider-Man games. That you can't buy digitally any of those old Spider-Man games that aren't made by Sony directly, because they lost the rights, and so those games are lost to history. If you don't own a physical copy, you will probably never be able to play those games. That there are things like that, and so it's kind of scary. And so I wanted to dive into it with you guys and share some of my thoughts on this digital world, and specifically when it comes to gaming, some of the things that are good about it and some of the cons. So let's dive into it. So essentially how we got here was just from streaming and digital stuff coming into the world, and us not really thinking about it. Like I said, many of us remember the dawn of this stuff becoming accessible and more widely seen. That I remember when you could buy games in the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 era digitally, and I thought it was kind of dumb unless they didn't actually have a physical copy. That I was like, why would you ever want to waste memory on your hard drive for that? And then I remember something really shifting in the PlayStation 4 era. That the first half, I still bought tons of games physically. I would go to the game store and buy them and have discs and whatever. I just remember getting to a point of being like, man, this sounds so dumb. But like getting up and having to change out a game is like a mild inconvenience. And the larger inconvenience I felt was the space that those things would take up in my home. That just having like shelves and shelves of games or movies or whatever was kind of annoying. And so I remember slowly shifting over to buying digital games. And the wonderful thing about it was that I could purchase a game and I could have another PlayStation 4 somewhere else, and I could access the game on both PlayStations. I didn't have to worry about bringing them around. I didn't have to worry about a disc. I didn't have to worry about losing a disc or getting a disc ruined or lending it to someone and them never giving it back. That I always had that game forever. And since the PlayStation 4 era, I personally have bought all of my games, whether it's on my Switch, whether it's on my PS5, whether it's whatever, digitally, because they usually have better deals, because of the convenience, because it feels like I will have that game forever. That's what I've been doing, but recently we've seen that that can be a problem. And to be honest, it's making me reconsider doing that at all, and making me really regret having that large digital library. That seeing the PlayStation 3 store almost shut down a few years ago until they stopped because of the fan backlash, and then seeing the Wii U shop, which I had games on, shut down, which you can still download your purchased games, but you can't purchase games in there anymore. And it feels like it's only a matter of time before players can't re-download their games anymore. It's a scary thing. to think about having all of those games I have essentially possibly become useless is spooky. And on top of that, to think about other media forms I have seen where all of a sudden the rights get pulled and they're gone is a scary thing. I've got a lot of fears about that, whether it's books, whether it's movies, whether it's TV shows or games. To be in a state in the world where people don't own physical things, and to think about how in the wrong hands, or even if just someone who doesn't care, they could just make those things that you've purchased completely disappear from the earth in the click of a button, is terrifying. To think about what happened with PlayStation and those movies disappearing, I feel for those consumers. Like, they actually physically bought something and it was ripped from them and they have no way of accessing it again. And that's a scary thing. And of course there's downsides to physical media. Like, you can lose your games or your books or your movies in other ways. If your house lights on fire, guess what? Your game's gone. Like, there's things that happen in life, and so there's no like foolproof thing. But to be honest, the more I'm thinking about the digital world and seeing what's happening, the more I'm becoming hesitant about playing games digitally. But to be honest, sooner or later, I don't even know if we'll have an option. Like, you look at both the PlayStation and Xbox, that they're starting to lean towards not even making consoles that have a disc drive. And if enough people choose to save a few bucks and buy a digital version, come the PS6, what makes them not think to themselves, well, why even bother with a disk drive at all? Nobody uses these things anymore. It's kind of like computers. Every computer used to have a disk drive. Every laptop used to have a drive where you could put disks in, and now almost none of them have it. It's something you have to buy separately, and now is kind of a useless feature. And I could really see that happening to video game consoles and to other things. And it's kind of spooky because I actually think physical media matters. And you have things like Best Buy getting rid of selling any sort of physical media, and other companies, and you see these mom and pop shops struggling to survive. And pretty much, luckily for them, retro gaming has become huge, and so you kind of have that. But yeah, I don't know. I've got a lot of concerns about it. And so what can we really do about it? I think, to be honest, like, supply and demand. Like, we live in a capitalist society, so if things make money, they'll keep making it. I would honestly suggest to you guys that if this is a problem that you feel or see on the horizon, to actually buy physical things. I don't buy books digitally. I'm actually really against it. I love Audible, but if I want a book, I'm going to buy it physically. That it's something I want on the shelf, that to be able to have those things are important to me. And I'm starting to feel the same way about video games, where it's like, I think actually owning this thing physically matters, and I want to be able to support the shops where people actually in my town work, where I can go to and buy and support that business, and then be able to own that game physically for myself, that nobody can just show up one day and take it from me, that someone can't just click a button and it's gone, that I have that thing on my shelf, and that I know it's always there to play, that in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, I'll still have that game. I can't say that with confidence about my games that are in my digital library, and that kind of spooks me, to be honest. And so I think that if we want to change this, that we genuinely just need to change our purchasing habits, that we need to be going to the mom and pop shops and video game stores and buying physical games, that you need to go to Best Buy while you can, to the Source, to Walmart, to wherever, and buy physical media. It would be really cool to see a resurgence where people decided, like, hey, physical things matter, and actually owning the game that you're supposedly owning matters. And I don't know. I love a lot of things about the digital world, but the longer we've lived in it, the more I'm starting to see a lot of the flaws and fears that we had initially come into reality. And so I'm starting to consider actually buying a lot more physical media than previously. But with that being said, I want to know what you guys think. So head down to the comment section down below. Let me know your thoughts. Do you buy games physically or digitally? Why would you consider moving into buying more games physically? Are you worried about possibly losing your games in 10, 20, 30 years from now? Let me know in the comment section down below. Let's have that conversation. Just kind of wanted to riff with you guys as I was thinking about it today. And so, yeah, I hope you enjoy. I look forward to having that conversation with you guys in the comment section down below. Like, comment, subscribe, all that junk, and I will see you guys in the next one.